Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Wright, I'm a photographer and I live near Granada in Spain. Now today what I wanted to do was to talk a little bit about cameras, and I had a very specific issue that I wanted to solve. I spend a lot of my time walking in the mountains and in various desert areas in Spain taking photographs. That's the type of photography that I do. And I go out pretty much once a week with a bunch of friends, and we go out in the mornings and we roam the Sierra Nevada. And part of this is about what camera do I take. I can take a rucksack full of kit, probably weighs close to 10 kilos maybe, my light rucksack. Sometimes we stay overnight, in which case it's a bigger bag, more kit, 15 kilos. It's quite a lot to lug around. Some of these walks are, 10 miles or more. So I wanted to get a smaller camera, and given that a lot of the time I spend basically scouting locations as in the daytime, I will, with the intention of coming back for a specific shot, I will go out and roam around and fire off pictures. And I wanted a camera that would be good enough to mean that if I got lucky and struck really brilliant light, like this photograph behind me was taken this week in the sort of lead up to a storm in the Sierra Nevada, and the light was absolutely beautiful. And this was shot with a very small camera. It was shot with this camera, the Ricoh GR IIIx. So that was a perfect example of what I wanted the camera for. And as a secondary use, I wanted to use it for street photography. I actually quite like taking pictures of people in Granada, because it's such a beautiful city and it really has character, and I like the, I'm not really a people photographer, but I do like the idea of trying to capture something about the city. And that really requires a small camera. You can't go hauling 15 kilos of kit around Granada and expect people not to notice you. You're not going to be unobtrusive. So the challenge was to get this small camera. And last year what I did was I bought the Ricoh GR IIIx. And I've got to say, it pretty much lived up to the hype. This camera is marketed primarily as a street photographer camera. This is the urban edition, which has got this beautiful blue bezel there. And I really like it. The lens is fantastic. It's very sharp. The controls are manageable. But I do have some very specific gripes which relate to the type of photography that I do. Number one gripe is it's not dustproof or weatherproof at all. If I switch the camera on, you'll see that the lens comes out, and when I switch it off again, the lens retracts. Now I don't know if you can see that in detail, but it has a very fine pair of plastic shutters that protect the lens from dirt. Now these shutters are fine to a point of being less than a millimetre thick, way less. They're very, very flimsy. And this in-out action, literally it's the reverse of a pair of bellows. It sucks air and with it dust. And I photograph in very, very dusty conditions. The mountains are just rocks. As you can see from the photograph, there's a lot of dust up there. And as you can also see from that picture, a lot of rain on occasion. And this camera not being weatherproof is a big problem for me. It's quite an expensive camera. And it's got to the point now where I'm very, very careful when I take it out. The other thing about the camera is that I bought this accessory. It's basically a thumb rest, designed specifically for the Ricoh GR III series. And the reason is that, I don't know if you can see here, but if it was not for the thumb rest, my hand will be resting on this control, which controls the exposure that you're taking. So that's not a great design, and if the ratio of camera size to hand is as it is for me, without the thumb rest, this is a very droppable camera, and I have dropped it once. It didn't hit the floor, fortunately. I managed to catch it. I seem to have adequately fast reactions when it comes to dropping 900 euros worth of camera, so I managed to catch it. So these are very real issues for me. So I started to look for a replacement. And I'm probably the only person in the world that has done this, but I elected to swap out my very trendy Ricoh GR IIIx for a camera that is not trendy, that is no longer in production, but does have the most fantastic specs. So let's have a look at that. Okay, this is the Canon G1x Mark III. Very confusing to compare these two cameras because they're almost identically named. One is the GR IIIx, this is the G1x III. This is made by Canon, that one's made by Ricoh. Insofar as we're talking about comparing the sensors, they're both APS-C, they're both technologies at the top of their game. You really couldn't wish for better sensors. I would say they are more or less equal. This camera is very sharp, the Ricoh also very sharp, but this has three big advantages. One is it's small, it's a little bit heavier. Four big advantages. One is the articulated screen that you can fold out, twist around. So this is really good for street photography, certainly. Second is it's actually got a viewfinder. You're not relying on the screen, and in bright sunlight, that relying on the screen is really an issue in Spain. Or other advantages, this camera is weatherproofed, so this doesn't have the same issue with attracting dust and weather to it. Cleaning the sensor would still be a factory job. So other things about this camera, it's almost identically set up on the back. Dials are in the same place, they do pretty much the same thing. You've got all the controls are really sort of perfectly matched across these two cameras. Slight difference, this has got exposure compensation in a dial on the top of the camera, which is incredibly useful for doing quick exposure compensation if you're shooting an aperture priority. It has a zoom lens, so you can see the zoom come out and retract. It's really a very nice camera. What it doesn't have going for it is popular opinion. This camera was not well received, and possibly the reason for that could be that when it came out, which was 2017, it was not equipped with 4K video, and my opinion is that had this been equipped with 4K video, this would have been a world beater. But Canon were releasing their new series of digital cameras around about the same time, as well as a whole range of cameras that were targeted at influencers and social media users. So the good video cameras went to that, and this remains the enthusiasts. It's a semi-pro camera in all but name. Takes fantastically good photographs. Let's have a look at some. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. Okay, so what's the verdict on these two cameras? Well, the Ricoh is an absolutely fantastic camera. Don't get me wrong, it's one of the best pocket cameras I've ever used. The lens is tack sharp, slightly sharper than the Canon, if I'm perfectly honest. The only reservation I have about the Ricoh is its fragility. It's very droppable, and its lack of dust proofness. So if your thing is street photography, then I think the Ricoh is absolutely the camera for you. Take care of it, take good care of it, keep it clean. I think absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure I'm going to miss it. The Canon, on the other hand, it's a bit of an ugly duckling. It's slightly ungainly. The portion here devoted to the viewfinder and the flash is somewhat out of proportion, I think, to the rest of the camera. Slightly bigger, and it makes it a little bit ungainly. So other than that, it does the job. And for me, it's all about, choice of a camera is all about whether it's going to do the job for you. And after a year, my feeling about the Ricoh was that it wasn't going to do the job for me, and that was all about me being worried that I might drop it out in the mountains, or that it might get dust in the lens, and so on and so forth. The Canon is weather sealed, it's got a zoom lens, it's got the same sensor, or rather the same type of sensor as the Ricoh, very similar processor. It's a very good camera indeed, and I really don't understand why Canon have stopped making it, but there it is. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only person to have grappled with this problem, and if you found a solution that isn't a camera that's out of production, I'd very much like to hear about it. The comments are down below. Tell me all about the camera, your pocket camera, and why you think it does the job perfectly. That would be great. If you could give us a like, that too would be fantastic, because it helps YouTube push the video out to other people who might be interested in the Ricoh, or who might be interested in the Canon G1x. So do give us a like, it's really helpful. If you're not a member, do subscribe. We release a video every Tuesday, and it's about cameras, it's about processing, it's about software, hardware, and the business of being a landscape photographer in the main. So subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week, next Tuesday. See you then. Cheers.